Okay guys, just going to break from tradition here, do a review on a film that's not banned and that doesn't have any censorship issues, at least not here in the UK. But it is a film series, or rather a reinterpretation of a film series that I feel is consistently hard done by and underrated. And of course Rob Zombie's Halloween films started in 2007 with the remake, or I would argue reinterpretation, of Halloween. This is the original British release on DVD. It claims it's uncut. That would suggest that there was a cut version, which isn't really the case. The cinematic version, at least in the UK, was slightly different than the DVD version. I think the main significant difference I can remember, having only seen the cinema version once, is that when Michael escapes from the hospital towards the beginning of the film, the sequence is a lot shorter in the cinema version. They're taking him through a holding cell, I think, and he headbutts a guy and escapes that way, whereas in the DVD version it's a prolonged rape scene. One of the orderlies gets one of his mates and they break into people's cells and they rape a woman in Michael's cell, which is a much more intense and sort of Rob Zombie-esque, as it were, scene, and works better. It's the director's cut edition, so we got the best release. However, we didn't get the original cinema version. That's, so far as I'm aware, has never been made available in the UK. You can get it abroad. There's a box set release in Europe. I think it came out in Germany, which features both versions of the film. This one it's got deleted scenes, so it features the sequences, but not the actual entire original cinematic version. I've also got the American 3-disc unrated collector's edition, over 4 hours of bonus material, including on disc 3, can't quite see that, a 4.5 hour, yes, it's 4.5 hour documentary by Rob Zombie on the making of Halloween. You also got deleted scenes, alternate ending, a Rob Zombie commentary, and yeah, and the works. This is unrated, it's Region 1. Got it off Amazon, well worth getting for the collection. The cover, outstanding, look at that. Why we couldn't get a cover like that on the UK version, I don't know. Moving on to Halloween 2, 2009, 2 years later. It's British release, standard really, you got extra scenes, deleted scenes, but again, if you want the best version, you have to go to America. Unrated director's cut of Halloween 2. These scenes featured in the director's cut are again included on the UK version as extra scenes, but the actual full version you cannot watch the unrated director's cut, as you can here. Now that is a major, I would say it's a major drawback. The unrated director's cut of Halloween 2 is overall, I think, is a better version of the film, particularly in the representation of Laurie's psychological breakdown and her relationship with Annie is much more strained and much more bitter. Their arguments are much nastier in the director's cut. You've also got extra scenes with her talking to a psychiatrist about the loss of her parents, which again is glazed over a bit too quickly in the cinema version. You get more out of the director's cut. It's a rawer, grittier cut, worth getting hold of. Again, this is only Region 1. However, it has been released in Europe. This is a German special edition, limited 3-disc collector's edition. This features both the original cinema version, if you can see there, and the unrated director's cut version. Now, for those of you in the UK, this is the disc. That's just a fancy box. You get the disc inside here, limited uncut edition. For those of you in the UK, it's worth getting hold of this because it is Region 2. So if you don't have Region 1 capability, it's worth getting that for the but also you'll get both versions in the same package. So it's well worth getting hold of. This cost me around about 45 quid, but it is surprisingly, despite being a numbered limited edition. You've got the number there, if you can read that, 1773, that's my number. I think it's a limited edition of 5,000 copies, but it is still relatively easily available on eBay and Amazon. It pops up quite a lot. So yeah, that's the collection. You've got a version of the original, of Rob Zombie's original first Halloween in the same box set as that, also, which had a few more copies made, and again, it contains both versions of the original. So you've got the cinema version in there as well, which I'm trying to get hold of. Will do eventually once I get some money. But yeah, the main reason for this review is I feel Rob Zombie's Halloween films are unfairly underrated, slagged off, to be quite honest. You look around YouTube reviews, they don't get great reviews, and I'm consistently surprised by that. I think personally, for a horror film, for a slasher film, I think they're outstanding. I wasn't overly impressed with The Devil's Rejects, Rob Zombie's earlier film, and I think it was House of 10,000. I think it was 10,000 Corpses, which I haven't seen. But Devil's Rejects I saw in the cinema. I wasn't overly impressed with it. I thought it was trying to be nasty and not really succeeding. But I think with Halloween, particularly in casting Tyler Mane, wrestler, as Michael Myers, he's really done brilliantly. The best way I saw it put, you have to excuse my language here, the best way I saw it put, I read a review online that said that Rob Zombie took Michael Myers and made him a scary motherfucker again, and that, although it's not the way I would choose to put it necessarily, that really does typify the way I feel about Michael Myers in Rob Zombie's Halloween films is outstanding. They're brutal. Compared to the originals, they put the originals to an extent to shame in the sense that they are brutal horror films, very violent, no holds barred, sort of stabathon, to coin a phrase, films. The originals, particularly the first, were based a lot more on suspense. And don't get me wrong, I love the originals as well. But I think you have to take these as a reinterpretation. That's a problem with the idea of a remake. I wouldn't say that these films are remakes in the same sense that like Last House on the Left or Psycho or Nightmare on Elm Street were remakes. I would say these are more reinterpretations in the fashion of Batman Begins and Casino Royale. They look at this in a more brutal way and a more realistic, I don't know, Michael Myers, but more realistic way in the sense that they look at Michael Myers as a psychopath rather than a monster. Yes, he is superhuman in these films, but they look more at the psychology. I mean, in the original, unlike the John Carpenter's version, this one actually takes Michael Myers as a child and looks at his story and his first killings and in theory, how he became a killer. It's a risky way to do it, and the actor, the kid in it, is brilliant. It's a shame that he got replaced for the second one because he had a growth spurt apparently. But he's brilliant. It doesn't quite work. It's still hard to see the transition from an angry kid who gets teased about his mum being a stripper to a psychopathic killer. But it's brave. It's a brave way to attempt to do it, and I think ultimately it does succeed in making an original version. The first one does pay homage to the original in quite a lot of respects. I mean, Laurie walking home with her two friends, after we pick it up later on as she's grown up. That's very similar, almost shot for shot, to the original. You've also got, although there's a twist, you've got the scene where you think Michael's placed the sheet over his head when he's about to kill one of her friends, but it turns out that that's actually the boyfriend, and Michael kills the boyfriend. So that's a play on the expectations that we derive from the original by getting us to expect it to be an identical remake and then actually surprising us. By the time you get to the end of Rob Zombie's Halloween, you'll understand this is not in any way a remake of the original. This is a reinterpretation of the story. Malcolm McDowell plays Sam Loomis and does a brilliant job. Very comical, more gritty, less stereotypical. He's much more interested, as is evidenced later on in the second one, in promoting himself rather than trying to save people, which you don't really get the same sense in the original films. He's not as square or as flat a character. And Laurie Strode, played by Scout Taylor Compton. Scout Taylor Compton is brilliant. When it first starts off and you see her joking around the dinner table, with her mum pretending to finger a bagel and that kind of thing, she comes across maybe as a bit irritating and frustrating, but I think by the time you get to the end of the first one, and especially the second one, you see that really is, that's not her being an irritating actress, that's her acting in the way that was required. She's a genuinely happy, slightly irritating teenage girl who by the end of the sequel is completely broken down and insane. And so, that demands a very sort of high caliber of actor, and she does a brilliant job. I think she's she's underrated for this. Her performance and her version of Laurie Strode is outstanding. As with Michael Myers, it's again, I don't understand the hatred towards remakes or reinterpretations. It feels like people think that you're betraying the original. I don't think that's the case. 2 years later, 2009, Halloween 2. the first 20 minutes or so is a homage to the original Halloween 2. Maybe a dream sequence, may not be. It looks as though it starts off pretty much directly from the ending of the first one, with Laurie walking through the streets after the massacre, and she's then taken to hospital and Michael turns up, and it's kind of like a 20-minute prelude, like a homage to the original Halloween 2, but then it picks up a year later, and from then on in it really is its own film. The events do not in any way mirror the original Halloween 2, which take place entirely in the hospital. And Laurie, rather than becoming the successful head mistress, the strong, single-minded woman of Halloween H2O in the original series, by the end of this one she's been driven insane, which is unfortunately, much more believable and makes it all the more horrifying. As I say, her relationship with Annie in the sequel again makes it a much more personal, brutal film, in the sense that they're at each other's throats, very nasty, fighting with each other, much more so than the cinematic version. The director's cut version is the one I'd recommend. There's much more depth. Like, Laurie sees a psychiatrist about losing her parents and the psychological damage this is doing to her. So she's not so much a stereotypical, good-looking teenager running around ignorant and then getting killed. She's genuinely broken down and destroyed by it. Her relationship with Annie makes for, a rarity, I would argue, in the horror slasher genre, in that when Annie dies, her death sequence, in my opinion, is genuinely emotional, and it's genuinely distressing and sad. You empathise with the characters. When Annie is killed in Halloween 2, it's really horrifying, and you really feel for the main character. Now, I would argue that is maybe not unique, but that's rare in the stalker slasher genre. And I think Rob Zombie, again, deserves much more credit for having produced characters, lasting characters, that you can actually feel empathy for. I mean, that's the problem I had with Human Centipede 2 and The Bunny Game and a lot of these contemporary horror films. While they are extreme, you don't really care about the characters or what's going on. Whereas I would argue, some people would say it's a Halloween film, it's Michael Myers, how can you think it's real? But I think it's got a realistic, gritty edge to it in this interpretation that is underrated, and it shouldn't be. The Michael Myers of Rob Zombie's Halloween film is outstanding. Brutal, gritty, it's very stylized. The originals are kind of masters of suspense, whereas Rob Zombie's reinterpretation is really, it's a brutal sort of assault. So that's kind of why it's relevant in a way to extreme cinema, in that it's it sort of pulls no punches, and I think it's outstanding. Well worth getting for the collection, any of these. As I say, you've got the box set. There is a version of the original which I want to get hold of as well. You've got the flecks of blood there on the box, which is kind of cool, and the again, uncensored director's cut. Although, as I say, so far as I'm aware, there's no censorship issues with these films. They're just very good, underrated, and deserve a lot more respect. I'm sure there are people who disagree with that. Feel free to let me know, always in a constructive fashion, of course. Yeah, Rob Zombie's Halloween, underrated. If anyone knows of any better editions or versions, box sets, let me know. Rob Zombie's Halloween.